Hi everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using the January My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. I have a number of videos that I edited but never voiced over, so I'm trying to get caught up on those videos now, and this is one of those videos. The limited edition kit generally has products from various manufacturers, but it usually features a particular collection. It has papers and embellishments from that collection. For the January kit, we received some beautiful papers and matching embellishments from the 49 and Market Serenity collection. Right now, I'm working with those embellishments, including some beautiful dimensional flowers. I'm inking the edges of them with some Distress Oxide in chipped sapphire. I'm using a round photo for this layout. I use my Creative Memories circle cutters to cut out the photo and then cut a white mat for it. And then I cut another slightly larger mat to go behind the white mat. I inked the edges of that mat with some chipped sapphire Distress Oxide. And now I have a larger mat and I'm inking that with tumbled glass. I'm going to use the larger mat to anchor a number of elements to make a wreath around my photo on. You are only going to see little touches of the light blue mat, so I didn't spend too much time fussing with the inking. If I knew it was going to be visible, I would have spent a little bit more time blending that Distress Oxide. I'm using two different colors of Distress Oxide to ink some of the branches that we received in the kit. I used Rustic Wilderness and Mowed Lawn. And now I'm going to start arranging all of these embellishments around my photo. I like to use gel medium to attach these dimensional flowers down to my layouts. I usually use the gel medium toward the end of the process of creating the layout, but this time I thought that I would attach them down and then I would be able to arrange all of the other elements around the large flowers without worrying about them moving around. 49 and Market has so many fantastic products. I love their pattern papers. I also really love the laser cuts that we often get with the My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kits. This particular kit had lots and lots of leaves and flowers, butterflies, all things that I love to use on my layouts and that are particularly good for using to create a wreath. I started with some of the relatively larger leaves and I placed those around the dimensional flowers. Then I used some of the smaller branches. In some cases, I cut them into smaller bits. And then after I had the leaves in place, I layered some butterflies on top of them. I didn't include all the footage because I spent a really long time arranging the leaves. For the larger butterflies, I put some foam on the back of their wings to pop them up a little bit off of the wreath. And for the little blue butterfly that I just placed on the lower right hand side on top of one of the white flowers, I just attached that directly down to the flower. I didn't pop that one up. It's sitting on top of the flower, so it already has a little bit of dimension. When I picked up my wreath, I realized that some of the leaves weren't attached down, so I used some ATG adhesive to do that. Now I have all of the major elements attached down to the wreath, and then to add a little bit more interest and dimension to the wreath, I'm adding some of the accessories that were included in the flower packs. I started off putting all three of these embellishments on the layout. Later on, I decided that I would just include two of them. And then I used some of the smaller off-white flowers and I put them on either side of the flower cluster that's on the top of the wreath. I don't dislike this layout, but I think I would have liked it a little bit more if I had made the wreath larger. Some of these embellishments, in particular the dimensional flowers, are a little large, and I think that if I had made the wreath a little bit larger, they would have looked a little bit more proportional. Now I'm taking those branches that I had inked earlier and I'm placing them all around the outside of the wreath. I like the idea of adding some greenery around the outside of it. It also helps to extend the wreath and make it look a little bit bigger. In some cases, I use the whole branch, and in others, I cut the branches down. Sometimes I'm able to use the top of the branch in one place, and then I can often cut the bottom piece and make it look a little bit more natural and not like it's been cut in two, and then use that piece on another part of the layout. I'm using an old bristle brush and some more of the gel medium, and I'm attaching all of these elements down to the wreath. Then I put that aside and I let it dry, and you'll see that again in a little while. I often like to add a mat to the outside of my layouts. I use 2 pieces of pattern paper from the kit and then a piece of light blue cardstock from my stash. I gut the tan piece of paper. That one is going to go all the way in the background. And then I attach a 12 by 12 piece of pattern paper that I know I'm not going to use to the back of it. This just helps to anchor that gutted piece of paper. It makes it a lot easier for me to work with. Then I cut the piece of blue paper a little bit smaller. I gutted that as well, just in case I wanted to use some of that paper on the layout. I don't end up using it, but I have made that mistake in the past. So I do like to gut the paper and then reserve whatever's in the center in case I want to add some matting or embellishing to the layout. I place that down, and then I take the piece of paper that's going to serve as my background. I cut that down to size, but before I attach it down, I add some mixed media to it. I start off with some Finnabair clear gesso, and then I trace around where the wreath is going to go on the left-hand side of the layout. I want to add some gesso, and I'm using some Finnabair heavy gesso, and I'm using a palette knife to apply it because I wanted to apply it a little bit thicker than usual. I wanted to kind of white out the area right behind the wreath just to give a little bit more interest to the background and to emphasize the wreath. As I was doing this, I wasn't really sure if I was going to like it. This isn't something that I do too often, but this ended up being my favorite part of the layout. I love the effect that using the palette knife with the heavy gesso gave to the background. I think because this piece of pattern paper already has some white areas on it, the white areas that I added with the gesso didn't stand out too much, and I just really like the effect of the palette knife. It's something that I should use more often on my layouts. I keep trialing the wreath and placing it over where I have the gesso. I want to make sure that I'm extending the gesso out far enough, but not too far. So I add a little bit of gesso. I place the wreath on top to make sure it looks the way I want it to. And then I continue adding the gesso until I'm happy with the results. In this kit, we got a fantastic set of rub-ons. I love rub-ons, and I really like these title rub-ons. There was one that said loved, and it fit nicely in the lower right-hand corner of the layout. Then I used the stencil from the kit and some Liquitex modeling paste, and I'm adding just a little bit of texture to the background. It's not super noticeable in the final layout. Even if modeling paste is only visible in a couple of little spots, I still think that it's worth adding to the layout. I think every little touch adds something to the final product. I have my wreath over to the left, I have my title in the lower right-hand corner, and I'm also going to add a little cluster in the upper right-hand side of the layout where I put some of the texture paste a few moments ago. I wanted to add some splatters to the background, so I'm using these little containers of Waverly paint that I got in Tuesday Morning a while back. They are acrylic paints, and I'm watering them down quite a bit so that they will splatter nicely on the background. I am mainly concentrating the splatters around the wreath, but I also put some in the upper right-hand corner and in the lower left-hand corner, particularly where I have that little bit of modeling paste on top of the title. I started off with a lighter color blue. This one is called Cornflower. I also use another lighter shade of blue. That color is called Pool. This darker color is called Ocean. I want the splatters to be small, so I'm using a small brush and I'm just tapping on the brush to cause the paint to splatter. Now I'm using a bottle that I have where I have already mixed some watered down white acrylic paint, and I'm splattering that all over the layout as well. Once again, concentrating the splatters where I have the title and the embellishments. Once I'm all done adding all of these layers of splatters, I put the pattern paper aside and let it air dry. Sometimes I use my heat gun, but the heat gun can often make the paper a little bit more warped than just letting it air dry, so I decided that I would just let it dry by itself. I added some adhesive to the back of the paper, and I place it on top of the other two papers I had already layered earlier. Now I'm adding the wreath to the layout, again using that matte gel medium to adhere that to the background. As I mentioned, I'm going to make a cluster in the upper right-hand corner. I had a large butterfly. I'm not sure if that butterfly is a little bit too big for that space, but I really liked that butterfly, so I decided that that would be the anchor for that part of the layout. And then I added a few more embellishments. I added some more butterflies to some additional parts of the layout. I added a sentiment under the title that says, "You are always in my heart." Then I took a little frame. The outside looks like the edge of a stamp, and I attached it down to a piece of pattern paper. I thought that I would arrange the sentiments on that, but then I decided that I didn't like the way they looked. They were too long and just covered up that whole embellishment, so I decided to put that aside. And now I'm using some fun foam, and I'm popping up that large butterfly and the small butterfly as well. I'm going to layer the small butterfly on top of the large butterfly. I also wanted to give some dimension to the sentiments that I am going to place underneath the large butterfly. One says "Embrace simplicity," one says "Right beside me," the other one says "Peace plus serenity." So I cut some very thin strips of fun foam and I place those on the back of each of the sentiments. And then I add some ATG adhesive to the foam and attach them down to the layout. Whenever I'm adding a series of sentiments like these, I usually don't like to have them all perfectly lined up. I usually stagger them. Usually I will have each of the sentiments starting in a different place. You could see that the dark blue and the light blue sentiments are lined up. Usually I won't line up any of them, but in this case, I decided that I would have just one of them offset. And now I'm adding some die cut buttons to a couple of different places on the layout. I have one up by the sentiments, I have two down by the title, and then I'm also going to add a few going around the wreath just to tie everything together. I popped up that sentiment that says "You are always in my heart" on some foam, and then because I'm adding some more butterflies, I need some more foam to pop up their wings. A lot of the 49 and Market collections have a lot of butterflies, and that's something I love because I love embellishing with butterflies. I feel like I never have too many of them. I wanted to add another texture, another material to the layout, and one of my favorite things to do is add some pearls. I added some round pearls to the wreath. I use a couple of different sizes. I use glossy accents to attach those down. I didn't include a lot of that footage because usually when I place pearls on my layouts, my head gets in the way of the camera because I like to be right on top looking exactly where I'm placing those pearls. Now I've covered up my photo and I'm adding some more white splatters. This time I want to make sure that I get the splatters on the wreath. That will help to make the wreath blend in with the rest of the layout. I'm also adding some pearls. These are half pearls that are in strips to some of the butterflies that are on the layout. I think this just adds another nice little touch and interesting detail to my layout. I add two small pearls, one to either side of the sentiment under the title, and that is the very last touch I add to this layout. This layout is complete, and here are some close-ups. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. I'm going to keep trying to get these older videos voiced over and up on my channel. I've just been a little bit busier this summer than I expected to be. If you would like to check out this month's My Creative Scrapbook kits, you can find the link to their website in the description box. You can also find links to all of their social media. I hope that you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you again on my channel soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.